I want to thank our listeners and viewers who have absolutely nothing else to do for finding no stoplights. I want to thank our sponsors, Pepsi of Florence, Carolina Bank, Micky Finn's, Marlboro MPD Electric Co-op, Francis Marion University, McLeod Health, McCall Farms, Victor's, and PLC Commercial. I've got several sheets here of potential podcasts that I've worked on. The overwhelming majority are government related. It's community government, it's city government, it's county government, it's the delegation, it's Francis Marion, McLeod, it's the co-ops and what happens in the co-op world. But every now and then, we as a community have something that stops us in our tracks. And this is kind of when I reached out to our next guest and I thought about, I actually thought about it for a week or so before I asked Jeff to join us. But the majority of the content of this podcast and a radio show I do is provocative. I mean, it's to give an opinion and hope it inspires some reaction, some response. Agree, disagree, agree a little bit, disagree a little bit. But something happened in our community, and I'll get to the exact date here in just a couple of minutes, that stopped me in my tracks. And our community has been very interested, not curious, that's not the right word, very interested and caring in this family. And I reached out to Zach McKay yesterday, I think, and asked Jeff to consider coming on the podcast. We're going to put politics on hold. We're putting county government on hold. We're putting city government on hold, higher education, real estate, all these things that are central to our feeble attempt at podcasting. I want to set by the wayside, and I want to allow something to happen that hardly happens in any medium, and that is authenticity. I told Jeff before we started, I've got no idea where this ends up. I've got no idea what sorts of questions I have for Jeff, and this is more about Jeff informing a concerned and interested community and caring community about what's happening in his life. I will say this, and I think this is important. I was on county council at a time when Zach McKay came to Florence to be the executive director of NESA, and Jeff and I had a good friendship, a good working relationship. We were trying our damnedest to create economic development opportunities. Jeff had a responsibility of the entire region. I was a member of Florence County Council, so I wanted everything in my county, and Jeff said, hey, we can't do it all in your county. We got this region to take care of, but I consider him a dear friend, and my heart broke when I heard the news of his kid. And it was not just Jeff and his kid. It was the fact that I found it so relatable. And I want Jeff to share some of this story, but my sister was born with spinal muscular atrophy, given a life expectancy of 8 years, ended up living 29 years, died of routine gallbladder surgery, but had spinal muscular atrophy, which was a very debilitating neurology or nerve disease and muscle disease and tissue and ligament and whatnot. Never developed. My sister never walked a day in her life. And I watched my dad, who was a go-getter, very much like Jeff, a hands-on guy, very much like Jeff, a guy that wants to fix everything, very much like Jeff. And it was very personal to me because I felt I could understand and had a lot of sympathy for what Jeff was probably dealing with because I saw my dad deal with a situation that was out of his control. And I watched him struggle with that situation that was so out of his control. And I began texting Jeff nearly daily, probably aggravating to the point of, wow, Ken's texting me again. But it was so personal with me, and it was so real and relevant with me. And Jeff has agreed to come on our podcast today and engage, inform our community about where they are as a family, where Zach is as a patient. So I want to welcome you. And I didn't mean for that almost a monologue to begin this with, but I do care, and you know I care, and I hurt for your family in a way that you can't imagine, and it is very personal to me, Jeff, because I shared my story about my sister with you.
Well, and let me start off by saying, you don't know how much I appreciated the text because, you know, I fortunately got a lot of text through this process from people who are supporting us, trying to build us up. But there for a while, every night I'd sit down and you'd send one, and it was uplifting. It was just one of those things that kind of gives you inner strength, and so I appreciate that first and foremost. But yes, on September the 30th, Zach had an accident, and I was actually in Louisiana at the time, having a little bit of R&R before I was to make a trip to Asia, and got the call in the middle of the night from my wife saying that he'd been in an accident. And, my kid, Zach's been in other accidents and whatnot, and you kind of, well, call me in the morning and let me know how it works out. Little did I know that this would be, one of the most devastating things that I've ever been through, and I'm sure Carrie would say the same thing. But he had fallen. He is pretty much, we were told when we got to the hospital, and I finally made it there, that, the only movement he was going to have was from the shoulders up. So he spent the following 17 days, I think, in the University of Tennessee Trauma Center in intensive care. I think he spent one day outside of intensive care before he was transferred to Shepherd Center in Atlanta, where he's at right now, for a long and who knows how long rehabilitation process, so he can really learn how to live. But I will say this, and for those of parents, I think they will agree with me. I've never had pain like I had.
Jeff, what exactly is the medical condition of Zach? I mean, my sister has spinal muscular atrophy. I don't know what that meant. She can't walk. She's in a wheelchair. Yep. What exactly is the biggest issue Zach's dealing with today?
So, Ken, he actually he as the doctors explained, I think it's 4, 5, and 6 vertebrae were injured. I think number 5 was crushed. 4 and 6 were able to be brought back in alignment with the plate. And the real problem was his spinal cord was crushed. Now, we're very fortunate that his spinal cord wasn't severed, because things could have really changed. But his condition is such that his body is trying to now adjust to the healing process of all that, which means he's gone through a period of time. He's got pneumonia. He still has pneumonia, but it's much better than it was. He went for a long time where every day about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, he would get a fever. And I mean a fever that was about 101 up to 102 and a half. He had a UTI. So the prognosis at Shepherd's is to try to rehabilitate him and try to teach him how to live with these injuries. And there is some hope that he may gain some movement at some point. And only God can tell him if what the ultimate outcome is going to be. But the challenge has been getting him over these little nagging other issues so that he can fully take advantage of the rehabilitation that they're giving him at Shepherd's. And it's been frustrating for him, as you can imagine, because his outlook, I'll tell you, his attitude has been better than mine would have ever been in that condition.
Zach's in really good shape.
Yes.
I mean, Zach played baseball at Citadel.
Yes.
He's always been athletic. He's always been outgoing. He's always been in good shape. Obviously, that's got to give him some advantage, doesn't it?
It does, and the doctors have said that. Said he, being 28 years old doesn't hurt him at all. Being athletic has helped him. An older person would have had, maybe some much different results. But he was very near death. And we had one of the doctors at Shepherd said, UT or Shepherd's one said, if I saw your chart and I saw your X-rays at a conference, I would have considered you would have always been on always been intubated and would never have, really gotten out of bed. So, and recently, I think I told you earlier, he had a big day yesterday. They put him in his wheelchair and he got to go to the grocery store. And for the most person, including myself, wouldn't consider that a big deal. But for him to be able to get out of bed, learn how to operate a wheelchair with his, with the puff and blow system in a crowd, that's a big thing. So he's getting to the point now where they're teaching him how to do things like that, and he's gotten pretty darn good with that, puff and blow system on his wheelchair, and that builds him up a lot when he can get out of bed. So, small victories for some, but big victories for him. And I think attitude-wise, as I said, it's, in a condition like he's in order for him to have, any recovery or growth or whatnot, we've all been told it's all about attitude. And his attitude is good. We're doing everything we can to try to continue to support him, but he's my son, and I can say this: he's hard-headed, he's strong-willed, and if you tell him he can't do something, there's a 99.9% chance that he's going to do everything he can to prove you wrong. So I've been extremely optimistic that he's going to get better.
How do you stay optimistic? I mean, you mentioned faith, and you and I had a conversation about, I think every human being has a journey of faith. There are times that we feel very in sync with God's will. We make God a priority in our lives. And I'll candidly admit there's a period of my life that I kind of stepped aside of that, and I put some other things as a priority. How has this traumatic moment in your life forced faith back to the front of the line, or allowed faith to come back to the front of the line?
Well, I'll say the same thing. I grew up in the church. Every time the church door was open, my grandmother had me sitting there, whether I wanted to be there or not. But as I got older and made my own decisions and whatnot, I'd still go to church, but it wasn't in the same mold as it was growing up. But when this happened, the only thing you can do is revert back to your faith that, and I've told everybody, listen, I'm 100% convinced that God has a plan for him. I'm 100% convinced that the reason he's here today is because God's got a plan for him. And, we've got to have faith that all this occurred for a reason, and he's alive because God wanted him to be alive. And, there's almost like a, hard to describe, but a sense of calmness, or that a sense that, I can't do anything about it, but God can. And every time somebody says, he's been surrounded by really good doctors and really good healthcare providers. Without exception, almost every one of them says, Zach, you got some issues, but hey, rely on God, rely on your strength there. So it's a comfort there. That and I believe in prayer too. I'll tell you this, this community, I've had 1,000 text messages, emails, calls, whatnot, all of them saying they're praying for Zach. And, and I heard our pastor one time say, when you always hear people say, we're going to pray for you, but how many people actually go out and pray for you? Well, I'll tell you right now, if you don't believe in the power of prayer and you don't believe people were praying for him, you should have seen him 60-some days ago. Do you feel that, Jeff?
100%. You feel that in your bones. You feel it inside your soul. When you see somebody or hear from somebody that you don't know and say, hey, man, I just want to reach out to you. Our Zach was on our prayer chain at church, and just want to let you know we've got, hundreds of people out here praying for him. I'll guarantee you it works. I saw him right after the accident, and I see him today. Did you ever, I'm interrupting you, but did you ever feel like that you may lose him? Was there a period of time in the beginning that you thought you may lose your son?
That's a tough question. I guess the night after it happened, when my wife called and really explained how bad it was, there was that sense that, this is real. I told you earlier, I kind of go through stages. First, it's, a shock. Second is, well, he, must not be that bad. He'll get over it. and then the third is the realization, and like, man, something is going on here, and it's not good. But fortunately, I had issues getting to Knoxville. I mean, it was everything you can imagine: flight delays, cancellations, and whatnot. So I got there the Monday after it happened. So he was in a little bit better. He was in more recovery, I guess, and it stabilized a little bit. So I didn't get to see him like his mother and his girlfriend saw him, but I could feel it. And then, but when your son goes into, or when your kid goes into surgery to have all this stuff repaired, yeah, I mean, you're always worried. Anything could happen at that point. So, but I just go back and say there was a sense of calmness, just because at that point you realize you can't do anything.
Home is two places. Mm-hmm. Home is where you're from and where you live. Yep. You're not from here. Nope. You came here when? 19
years ago. Been 19 years, December the 4th.
And you told me that when you first visited, your family wasn't quite sure where this was where you're supposed to be. Yep. Walk me through what not home where you come from, but home where you live today is meant to you and your family, Zach included.
Yep. So when we made the first visit down here, when my wife made the first visit down here, I'll never forget what she said going home. She goes, "Are you serious?" She said, "Florence." And I told her, I said, "Carrie, there's something about this place I like and the people." And we had the long conversation, and I said, just give me a chance, give it a chance. So we moved down here, and I'll never forget, Gene Leatherman said, now Carrie, this is a community where you're going to have to reach out, because, they're going to want to know you're going to be here, and you're not just passing through. And I said, it's going to take a few months, but said, they'll embrace you and whatnot. And it did. It took my wife probably a year before she really became ingrained in the community. I was in a lot of circles, and it was much easier for me. But I will tell you, today, I couldn't pry her out of here. I couldn't pry my kid. Zach is a Citadel graduate, went to work in Charleston, and we thought he'll never come home. Within a year and a half, he's back in Florence. My daughter she's in Charleston now, but I'll bet you, and she'll start PA school in January at Carolina. I'll bet you when she finishes there, she'll gravitate back here. You said, where is home now? Home is Florence for us. It has embraced us. The community raised my kids. From the time I think we moved down here when he was in the 5th grade. I never had to worry about him from that point, because he had a family outside of just our four walls, and they've shown us that through this, his scope of influence is bigger than mine. I mean, people love him. People love our family. And as I said, people that I really don't know they've come out of the woodwork to support us. So it'd be tough to leave Florence.
I'm asking you a lot about weather because of I can remember as a young kid, my dad struggling with the fact that his sister was going to be different. Yep. We're talking a lot about you dealing with that. Does Zach grasp where he is today? Does he understand? Obviously he's had a lot thrown at him. something totally unexpected and tragic happens. We wish it had never happened, but as I like to say, it is what it is. You're dealing with it. Your family's dealing with it. Is Zach processing and dealing with it?
I think so. I think he is, he's fully aware that things changed for him that night. And, I'm sure he's like myself and my wife. We don't know what, he hasn't been home since then. She hasn't been home since then. We don't know what what the expectations are going to be from us when we get him back. But we both just know we got to deal with it. I think Zach is in that same mode. You know, he's still going to have the same friends. He's still going to have the same circles that he runs in. And, you know, I'll give you an example. He was talking to, you know, he works for Marion County Economic Development. He's been on the phone with them since he's been over there, fully expecting that he's going to be involved in something when he gets back. So it's kind of hard to articulate, but, you know, it's not the hand we wanted to be dealt, but guess what? It's the only one we got, so we got to deal with it, and we'll make it work. I have spent I've spent the last, you know, probably couple of weeks learning more about handicap vans, and you know, the handicap requirements on doors and things like that than I ever thought about, and you know, certainly didn't want to learn about it. But we're going to, you know, we've got to put all that together to get him home so that he can, you know, he can maneuver around when he gets here. But I fully expect him to have as fruitful and impactful life after he gets home than you know, when he left.
Has it been hard? One of my struggles in life is my kids growing up and being allowed to make their own decisions, because I think, damn it, I can still make better decisions for them than they can. Has there been an episode or two or three of having to kind of step back and say, look, Zach's not 16. I mean, Zach is a full-grown man entitled to make decisions about his health and well-being as he chooses.
You know, when that hit me first was in the hospital, in his hospital room, with the surgeon coming in and saying, Zach, we need to talk about your surgery. And he looked right at his mom and me and go, do you want them in here? Now, if that doesn't hit you right between the eyes, I mean, and remind you, he's a grown adult. He's going to be making his own decisions. And it kind of puts you in your place a little bit. But the other side of that, and you said 2 or 3 times, I can give you 50 examples since all this happened that it makes you aware that you're not making decisions for him. Last night I had to get he on the phone because I've been talking to a guy who's going to help come in and do some door widening and things like that. But it's his house. So, you know, my question is to him, hey, this is what you need to have done. Are you okay with me getting this guy to come in and do it in your house? Whereas before, we wouldn't give it a thought. We're gonna get the Sawzall. We're gonna bust some walls out, and we're gonna make this happen. But it's not my decision.
Jeff, in mine and your world, timelines rule the day. And we've got deadlines, and we've got quarters, and we've got months. I mean, it's just I don't like it, and sometimes I despise it, but it is what it is. Have you allowed yourself to not force a timeline on the situation your family finds itself in?
That's tough. You know, my nature is to, you know, not wait around for somebody else to do it myself, get it done, and push forward. But
you can't fix this with a sledgehammer.
No, you can't. So the patient part of what we were talking about earlier, just being patient and let God work the plan He's got doing. That's been one of the toughest things for me to deal with. You know, my question, why don't they have him in rehab for 3 hours today? Why don't they just have him an hour? You know, keep working him. He's, you know, and I just have to, you know, swallow real hard, back out, and you know, say it's not my decision. The same could be true. Well, let me back up. When all this happened, I'll tell you, my priorities have changed a little. Personally, things that I used to think were real important, they're not as important to me as they used to be. And I've got to catch myself because I've got another child. And every time she gets in the car to leave Florence to go back to Charleston, you know, I've catch myself watching the phone where I can see where she's at, how far she's, you know, gotten to where she's at. And I just have to tell myself, you know, here again, they're grown adults. I can't control it, but I damn sure worry about it, you know, and a lot more than I probably did before, and that's tough.
Is it okay to be sad? Do you have those moments and days that you feel sorry for yourself and sorry for you? I mean, that would be natural to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand you put your game face back on, you accept where you are, and you move along the best you know how. But do you get sad? Is it okay for you, your wife and daughter, to be sad about the situation?
I think it, you know, anybody that tells you otherwise will be lying. I think there is, you know, and I'm not so much sad for me or my wife. I'm sad for him. But once again, I look at how he's handling it, how he's moving along, and you know, there's life ahead.
Sure.
And I truly believe he's got that spirit, he's got that willpower. He's gonna make an impact doing something. It's just tough. He's a 28-year-old kid. So,
that thought he had one life to lead, and now he finds out he's got a different life to lead.
That's right.
Jeff, I mean, this is important to me because I've read Facebook and I've kept up with all the. I mean, you and I've talked a lot. We've met and tried to discuss the best way we know how. And you know, social media is famous for craziness and outrageousness and political opinions and dispositions and divisive language and talk. But every time I see something that involves you, your family, and Zach's situation, it's not about, are you a Trump voter or a Biden voter? Or are you a Gamecock or a Tiger? Or are you a South Carolinian or a North Carolinian? It is genuine love and caring for Zach and your family.
Yep. Goes back to what I said before. I mean, this place is home, and you know, we've got more. It's humbling, Ken. I'm just telling you, we've got more friends and family that we didn't know about through this thing, you know, and it's just words can't describe. And the links that people will go to try to support you, and you know, what we get all the time is what can we do for you? Is there something? And I know
what can we do, Jeff? I mean, what from the horse's mouth? Forget social media and what he said, she said, or they said, and they. What can we do for your family?
You know, I would say the best. You've already done. Everybody's already done the best thing they can do for us, and that is to continue to support him, pray for him, you know, reach out to him. That has been, you know, that has lifted him up and lifted us up more than we could ever describe. And you know, I go back. I've been fortunate that, you know, I still come back and I can work. So I can take my mind, I can put my mind in my work and not think about all this all the time. My wife has yet to be home. So she's been there in the hospital room every day with him since the accident occurred. But there's somebody reaching out to her every day, every hour, building her up. And if that
it matters, doesn't it?
100%. If not, I don't know that. I know she wouldn't be in the same state of mind that she's in right now. So, I mean, this community, I can't thank this community enough. And it's, as I say, I'm not a Facebook guy. You know, I don't have a Facebook page. I don't get on social media because it makes me mad. And so I do. My daughter and Zach's girlfriend try to update people and whatnot. So I'll go on and I'll read it. And I don't know who the guy is. I don't know that I've ever met him. But he posted a video on there one day and talking about the T-shirt. And, you know, I love what he said.
I know the guy you're talking about. I saw the video.
Right. But the thing that made me love it even more is Zach inspired somebody to do that. And I say, if he can do it, you know, from a hospital bed, I think God's got a great future for him going ahead. And that's all you can ask. If you can leave this world and you've had an impact by either inspiring somebody or, you know, being a testament to somebody, I think you've lived a pretty good life.
Tell us about the T-shirts.
So this was done by, I think, Zach and Zach's girlfriend's mother, actually. Or excuse me, Zach's girlfriend and his mother. The story was that when the ambulance picked Zach up and they were, all this stuff there, they were kind of, getting rid of articles or whatever. Evidently, his mother, her girlfriend's mother, said his shoes were there and said, "Well, I'm gonna take these shoes because he's gonna need them one day." And that's where that walk for Zach kind of got started. And then I think his girlfriend started the T-shirts, just designed a T-shirt with the scripture from Jeremiah on the back of it, and just kind of put it out there. And I don't know what the count was, but I mean they've sold thousands of these things. And what it is, I think $6 from every one goes to a fund to help him. And they were thinking maybe sell a couple hundred or whatnot, but it's gone crazy. And even Zach, here again, my kid is the one. Zach, you've dealt with him. He is that one that's where am I going to make my next million from? He's talked about through this of how he can use that to either start a foundation or do something so he can help the community, as he comes out of this thing. And from his side, if that's what he does or that's what this does for him, then hey, maybe, good can come out of it. So.
Last question, and I appreciate you joining us. I mean, once again, I had no script. I didn't know where we would go, where we would end up. Just been a friend of mine for a long time in a very different sort of way. We were normally talking about economic development, county government, and the region, and the county, and all these other sorts of things. But I've gotten to know Zach a little bit through working out at the gym and sports and athletics, and we pull for different teams, but that's okay as well. I think he was actually at the Tennessee-Carolina football game,
that's right.
if I'm not mistaken, when he had the accident. When you talk about remodeling a house and widening doors, he's coming home.
Yes. Do
we have any idea when?
So they've told him, as a matter of fact, we talked about this last night or today. So they've told him January, or they've given him a date of January. But we're not holding to that date. I think that's dependent on, getting over some of these other things. And they had told him before that they thought December, so it's a fluid date. But I think if he can get these little nagging issues behind him and whatnot, I think he very well could stick to that. But before we end up I want to clarify something if I can. So Florence is my home, and this is my family. But I also say I got to say, this region as a whole, I've had. The folks in here again, Marion. You thought Zach had grown up in Marion with all the people from Marion that are reaching out. Horry County folks, Georgetown County. My whole region that I work in has been just, Ken, it's unbelievable. But it is, for people who it's instilled, I guess, it's making me a better person because I was starting to get that crusty old guy, getting
losing faith in humanity.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, this right here has given me more just encouragement that, people do care. And there's a lot of people out there sincere in their desire to help. And, man, it's making a difference. And I appreciate every bit of it. My board has been, I think they've been more concerned at times than I have, that things are. Fred Carter and Yancey McGill, just have been wonderful. And it's, that's helped a ton. So, and you, and I
I nag you a little bit. And I go back to what I said, Jeff. The only reason that I felt, led to reach out to you consistently is I watched my dad. Yep. And I watched him struggle with something he never, ever saw coming and never imagined he'd have to deal with. And I watched him frustrated, and I watched him upset, and I watched him cry and hurt in ways that My dad just didn't do those sorts of things. So when we met, it is certainly, I mean, I love Zach to death, and I mean that sincerely. And I'm telling you guys, I'll look at the camera when I say this, don't bet against him. I mean, I don't know where he ends up, but don't bet against him. He's got youth. And that's a big part of getting him to a better place. But I just once again, the majority of our podcast are probably a little more centered on politics and government and public opinion and public policy. But the one thing we're trying to do here at No Stoplights, I mean, I'm from Pamplico, no stoplights. College dropout from a town with no stoplight. It is a part of this region. And when I heard the news of Zach, I felt led to be involved in some way, shape, or form. And I knew that Jeff probably wanted to tell the community how much he really and truly appreciated their overwhelming support. And you've absolutely had a chance to do that.
And I appreciate that because it's, I hate to keep harping on it, but it has made such a difference to this point, and it'll make a difference, moving forward with him. But the support and the outreach that's been given to this, it's just, words cannot describe. I mean, I truly feel that. But you say words can't describe it. You've done a real good job with your words today. And I'm gonna look at the camera and tell Zach this because I know he'll watch it one day. I need a spot upstairs at McLeod one of these days, and I'm counting on you to be there. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.